On today's Locked On NBA Game Night podcast, what we learned in round number one as the Nuggets beat down the Clippers in Game 7.
When that final buzzer rings, you know it's time for Locked On NBA Game Night. All the post-game reactions to every game across the league, every single night, with insights only the hosts at Locked On can provide. It's the true NBA fans' one stop for all the action. Every game, every night. It's Locked On NBA Game Night. Tipping off now.
Let's get it going on Locked On NBA Game Night. I'm one of your hosts, Rylan Stiles, Locked On Thunder. Joining me today is Danny Cunningham, Locked On Cavs. We're here breaking down Game 7, a beatdown between the Nuggets and the Clippers, previewing another Game 7 tonight, and also telling you what we learned about in the first round of the NBA playoffs. Danny, it's playoff time. We just watched the Game 7. How you feeling today?
Rylan, we deserved more. After what that series between Denver and the Clippers was through the first 6 games, we deserved so much more from the LA Clippers in Game 7 than what we got. We had overtime early. We had an incredible game-winning alley-oop in Game 4 to even things up at 2-2. And then that's what we get in Game 7. I am so disappointed in what took place inside Ball Arena from the Clippers on Saturday night.
Sometimes all you can say about a game is, wow. Let's head to Denver and hear how Locked On Nuggets is reacting.
Wow. The Denver Nuggets get a historic win over the Los Angeles Clippers in Game 7 of this great NBA series. The Denver Nuggets win 120-101, and the score does not indicate how one-sided this game was. The Denver Nuggets were up 33 points at one point in time. They had a 15-0 run at the top of the third quarter. Russell Westbrook was spectacular this game. Peyton Watson, Aaron Gordon, Christian Brown, the role players last year for the Denver Nuggets, Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray, they combined for 69 points last season in Game 7, and they lost the game because no one had more than 7 points. But this year, the Denver Nuggets, everybody else stepped up and did their job. Jokic didn't have the greatest game, didn't need to, barely played any minutes in the fourth quarter. Jamal Murray, great shot making down the stretch of the game. It's official. The Denver Nuggets moving on to the second round. OKC, Denver, SGA, Jokic. The battle of the MVPs is here.
It is here. The second round set to begin on Monday for the Nuggets and the Thunder. Quick turnaround for those two. Danny, after Stevie Billions pulled out one of the best moves we've ever seen from an owner to just fly in season ticket holders and try to invade Ball Arena, it did not work. Very cool decision by him, but one that could not rally the Clippers as they get routed up by the Denver Nuggets 120-101. You mentioned it. This was not the game we deserved, and it was not in line with what we saw for the majority of the 7-game series. So whenever you saw this unfolding, what was the first thing to hit you?
I mean, the first thing is going to be James Harden. Like that, I think that kind of has to be the story from the Clippers side of things. Yes, I thought that the Clippers looked exhausted. They looked like a team that had played a very, very difficult first 6 games of this series, and the Nuggets at home, I think predictably, looked like a team that had just more energy, had more juice, was a little bit more ready to go in this game. But James Harden did what James Harden has done essentially throughout his entire career, where it's a really big game in the playoffs. And what does he do? He vanishes. He only took 8 shots, which I believe was a season low for him. He's 1 of 4 from deep, 2 of 8 from the floor. Had, a lot of assists. I think he finished with 13 assists, which that's great. But that to me is, okay, he has so many assists. Sometimes you can tell a guy really fills up the stat sheet with assists because they're doing a great job playmaking. They're really doing a really good job of setting other people up. It felt in this game, and maybe you disagree, but to me, it felt like in this game, he had so many assists because he didn't want the ball in his hands. He didn't want to be the guy that was deciding this game. James Harden, I think, unfortunately for Clippers fans, James Harden did what James Harden has done. And at some point you thought, okay, maybe this is going to be the time. In a year for a franchise historically, like things just have never gone well for the Clippers. They've never been good when you expect them to be good. So this year, I think FanDuel, our friends over there, set their win total at 35.5, and they win 50 games. By any measure, this is such a successful season for the Clippers. So that maybe made some of us think, okay, if this can happen for the Clippers, if they can exceed expectations by this much, maybe James Harden can too when it counts. Nope, turns out he can't. He just turned right back in to James Harden. I thought Kawhi Leonard was good in spurts. I thought Zoo was good in spurts, but James Harden ultimately just not good enough. And that, I think, is the biggest story on that side of things. What did you see from Denver, Rylan?
Yeah, I would totally agree with you on James Harden. It felt like a 15-year vet who just didn't want to be the guy to mess it up. And so he wanted the ball out of his hands as much as possible. And it did not work out for the Clippers, in largely because of what Denver did. I was thoroughly impressed by their defense, because throughout this series, they've been letting up just layup line triples, especially in the corners from the Clippers. And you would imagine like this, that would never happen in the playoffs, because you're always going to try to have the juice in your fastball and be intense defensively. That's not been the case for Denver. Now, in this game, their rotations were crisp. They did not let a ton of shot windows open up for the Clippers, and you saw the results being a 29% shooting night from the Clippers from three. The fact that Denver was able to rear back and get that fastball defensively, especially whenever we know their roster limitations and their defensive limitations, I thought was really impressive, and something that they can try to build upon as they enter a series where they're going to have to dig deep. Forgetting about the rest of the series, dig deep in game one. You just got this game 7 win. You're playing in OKC against the best team in the NBA record-wise on Monday night. There's no rest for the Riri for a team that does not have a lot of depth. Can they parlay that defensive effort, which was really good tonight, into success on Monday night? But their defense, way more impressive than I thought it was going to be.
I agree with you about the depth. I agree with you about the defense too. And I think oftentimes historically, maybe this isn't as true in the first round as it is when you get to the second round conference finals, NBA finals with game sevens, but historically game sevens tend to be a little bit more of a rock fight. And maybe that's part of it, because part of some of the wide open shots that the Clippers generated were to guys that the Nuggets were very comfortable shooting. Like Chris Dunn, by the end of the series, he couldn't play, but when they tried to play him, what did the Nuggets do? They just allowed him, hey, take all the wide open shots you want, because you're not going to hit him. They let Derrick Jones Jr. wide open. He hit the first one, but after that could not connect. So I think it was a smart defensive strategy, because they forced the Clippers into the guys that Denver wanted to be taking the shots. And more often than not, especially in a game 7 where things tend to be a little bit tighter, that's going to work out for you. Now, you mentioned the next series for Denver, and I don't have the schedule to that one memorized. I would assume game 2 is Wednesday in OKC. Am I correct there?
You're correct. It's an every other day series for the first 4 games.
Can Denver just show up for that? Because I don't know, and we saw this with Memphis, and listen, OKC was always going to win game 1 against Memphis, but I think part of the reason why they were up by 50-plus points in that game was because Memphis had to play a play-in game, essentially a game 7, 48 hours before opening tip-off of the first, less than 48 hours actually, because they tipped off at noon. Denver, I do not see a roadmap to the Nuggets winning game 1. They're entering a series, and this is why you have to take care of business early. If you're a team like the Nuggets and you have a chance to win a game 6 on the road to clinch a series, you got to do it, because now they're entering a series where they have the guy they believe is the best player in the world. And I think that this series that's going to be a huge talking point, but they enter the series now essentially having to win 4 out of 6 games, because you're not winning game 1 in OKC after playing a game 7, 48 hours before. You're just not doing that.
Yeah, the Thunder have to make sure that they win game 1, and they're 3-0 in game 1s. Even though they lost that Dallas series last year, they won game 1, and they've in all 3 game 1s to this point, and including now this 4th game 1 with this core, including Mark Daigneault being the head coach, the Thunder have had long layoffs. They had the long layoff in the play-in tournament last year and this year. They swept the Pelicans and they swept the Grizzlies this year. Both of those series finished before the 4-5 matchup did in both seasons. So they're accustomed to these long layoffs. They're accustomed to these quick turnarounds. The Thunder actually embrace it. Being out at Thunder practice, they talk about how they actually like kind of not knowing their opponent, because you kind of avoid getting bogged down in the preparation and over preparing, so to say, for this series, for kind of a lack of a better term. I think that the Thunder have to just go 4-0 now in game 1s and put the pressure completely onto Denver, especially in what's going to be an emotional series. The MVP will be handed out in this series. Russell Westbrook is playing in the Paycom Center against the Thunder in the playoffs with fans in the stands. The first time he played against the Thunder in the playoffs, it was in the bubble, and it was against a spunky Thunder team that couldn't win a series. This time, you're trying to pull off a big upset And that emotion is going to run high. You saw what he did at the end of this series with the Clippers, where he's talking in the locker room about how the Clippers chose Chris Dunn over him. He's yelling on the court, getting a technical foul to ramp up his crowd. Sometimes when Russ plays with emotion, it's not good. Sometimes it's great. It's like, how does that pendulum swing for their next series? It's going to be very interesting to watch.
It's going to be good for somebody. It's either going to be good for Denver. It's going to be good for OKC. It's going to be good for one of those two teams. It will be good. You just don't know who it's going to be. Sometimes it's good for both teams on the same night. We've seen him, I think, in this series specifically that we just watched, kind of be both teams MVP at certain points, right? Like that's kind of what he has become at this point in his career. I think going back to OKC for a playoff series is obviously not going to be the biggest storyline because Russ is not what he was when he left OKC. He's not an MVP caliber player anymore. That's going to take a back seat to the Jokic SGA conversation that I'm sure is going to dominate all of the podcasts, such as this one, over the next several days. But Russ going back to where it all began for him, I think is a really cool subplot, if you will, to that series.
And he's gotten this standing ovation every single time he's checked in to a game at the Paycom Center.
Do you expect that in the postseason? Like, because I've always wondered this as somebody who covers a team that their best player in franchise history doesn't play here anymore. That LeBron James guy plays for the Lakers now. You might be familiar with him. Every time he's back in Cleveland, it's a tribute video. It's a standing ovation. It's nothing but love. But unless the Cavs and Lakers are in the finals, they're never going to be in a situation where they play in a game that really, really matters. How do you expect him to be received in OKC as an opponent in a playoff game?
Yeah, you know, the Thunder fan base just loves Russ to where I think, and I hope it kind of goes this way, the first time he checks into the series, you do your rah-rah ovation, but then after that, he's just another player, and he's just another player you want to beat. And I think that Russell Westbrook, whenever you talk about his mentality, would want that same thing. Like he's been on record. His only front of the court is Spalding. Like Russ understands, the city understands what that relationship is. You give him a hat tip when he checks in, and then from there, he's the same as you would treat Michael Porter Jr. in this game. And you just move forward and root for the Thunder, boo the Nuggets, and see who comes out on top and kind of restore what is a fantastic home court advantage for Oklahoma City. So that's how I think it'll go. Coming up, we'll talk a little bit more about this upcoming series because we're going to talk about what we learned in round number 1, as there's only one game left in the first round. But first, I want to say right now, our good friends over at Monarch Money. Folks, we've all been there. If you've ever checked your bank account and wondered, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. With Monarch Money, it isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and start building your wealth. I love the all-in-one convenience without juggling multiple apps right on Monarch Money. You can check your finances. You can track your spending. You can even plan your long-term goals. So take control of your finances with monarchmoney.com. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day here on Locked On NBA Game Night. Talking with Danny Cunningham, Locked On Cavs. I'm Rylan Stiles with the Locked On Thunder. Danny, what did we learn in the first round of this playoffs?
So I think, Rylan, I've been working on this theory, and the theory that I think I've learned from this first round is that we are inching closer to depth mattering just as much as superstars. Because go through the list of teams that are still remaining, and obviously we know there are 9 teams left, and tonight one of those teams will be eliminated, and 7 of the 8 teams that will be playing in the second round played in the second round last year. The only team that made the second round last year not playing this year is Dallas. Obviously they made the finals. I think they made some sort of trade during the season, and the winner of the Golden State Houston series will be replacing them. That'll be the new team. But outside of, I think, Houston at this point, every team left has somebody that I would consider a superstar. Obviously, the Thunder have SGA. Denver's got Jokic. Minnesota's got Ant. The Cavs have Donovan Mitchell. The Pacers have Tyrese Halliburton. Boston has Jason Tatum. The Knicks have Jalen Brunson. Like all these teams have superstars, and not all superstars are created equal. But I just think there's so much top end talent right now in the NBA that depth matters more than ever, because I do think we're getting to a point, Rylan, that who your like worst player in your rotation is can start to decide who is winning playoff series in a way that I don't think it did 5 years ago because of how many great players there are. So it gets to a point, and I do think that the game we watched tonight can be a pretty good example of this. Like Denver won this game in part because role players stepped up, and they had more guys that could just be on the floor in a game 7. So as you look through these teams that are left, like I think the best part about OKC is not that they have the guy that's going to win MVP. It's that they've got 10 dudes that are really good NBA players. I think the best part of the Cavs, not that Donovan Mitchell's awesome, not that Evan Mobley took a gigantic step forward offensively. It's that their 10th guy could be a starter on another team in the second round. And I just think that the deeper you get into this, with how good all these teams are at the top, I think the bottom of the rotations are starting to matter more. And I thought there was no series that was more evident in than the Minnesota Lakers series. Because you look at those two teams, Ant is awesome. Luka Doncic is better than Ant. LeBron James, I would still take over Anthony Edwards. But you know what I would take after that? Like the next 6 players in that series would all be members of the Wolves. And I think that that is just such a big deal right now.
It is a huge deal. And that was a big litmus test for this kind of you're only as strong as your weakest link theory. And I would agree with it right now on the premise and the sample size that we do have, which is a change because for as long as we've been watching basketball, we've talked about this being a star-driven league, and like so-and-so can just drag their team deeper in the playoffs than they should go. So-and-so is worth 2 wins by himself. Where do you find the other 2 to win that playoff series? And that's all you really need to do. Whereas this year, and in this era of basketball, things are more well-rounded. Another big litmus test for that theory would be Oklahoma City and Denver. Because with Denver, like you have Jamal Murray, who's capable of being excellent in the playoffs. You have the best player in the world, Nikola Jokic. Usually, that's been enough in the NBA. It's just have the best player in the world, have a co-star with them. You'll figure it out later. But with Denver, what do you do whenever Christian Brown's not hot and Russell Westbrook's turning the ball over and Michael Porter Jr. is not shooting lights out? Like they don't really have anywhere else to turn. They just kind of have to sink or swim with those guys. Where on the flip side, Oklahoma City has Shea, J-Dub / Chet, whoever you want to consider their number 2 guy. But if Isaiah Joe's not hitting, try Cason Wallace. If Cason Wallace isn't hitting, well, let's try Alex Caruso. If Alex Caruso's not hitting, well, hopefully Lou Dort is. Well, if Lou Dort's not hitting, let's try Aaron Wiggins. And you go on down the list of guys who are capable of hitting shots, who are capable of being game changers. The Thunder just have more guys to flip through in their Rolodex of their rotation than Denver does. So I think that this series will kind of put the exclamation point on that theory and of that changing of the guard and the way that we view the NBA as more than just a star-driven league.
And I think a good way to think about this is let's just keep with this OKC Denver series. Let's say that you emptied both rosters into a pool, and Stan Presti is on one side and he's drafting, and whoever is the GM right now for Denver, because they don't have one, on the other side is drafting players for the Nuggets and the Thunder. Jokic or SGA goes first, the other one goes second. There's probably a conversation between J-Dub and Jamal Murray for who goes third, and then Chet is in that conversation too. But like of the first 10 players selected, how many of those guys currently play for the Thunder? How many of those guys currently play for the Nuggets? Like there are definitely more Thunder players in that top 10 than there are Nuggets players. Just because Denver might have the best player in the series doesn't mean that they should be the favorites the way that they would have been 5 years ago. Like I think that is the best way to kind of summarize the point that I'm getting at, is that it just who has more top 10 players in the series. And I think more often than not, that's the team that's going to win.
Yeah. And I mean, it's a very interesting way to look at the team building aspect, because you can't have a championship level team without a Shea or a Jokic or an Anthony Edwards or whoever, but you also can't only have that one part of the formula. And it leads into another aspect of team building of like the star compilation in LA, where it's like they got Luka and they got LeBron and they got Reeves. And did any of them have the playoff, kind of success and production that is up to their standard? You'd probably say no in this series against the Timberwolves. However, they also didn't have a big man. And I'm a big proponent of small ball. I'm especially a big proponent of like the modern big man, where you always kind of are looking for versatility in that position and guys who can switch and guys who aren't just plotting big men. But you got to have a big man. And it's like, this is the second straight year where you look at a team on the surface level and they have a lot of the stuff you need. Oklahoma City last year and the Lakers this year, but that one piece of the puzzle, not having a stable front court rotation, kind of foiled them in big opportunities. And obviously the Thunder did get a playoff series win last year with that formula because they played the Pelicans. They didn't play a team like the Wolves. Whenever they did face a good team, they lost to Dallas in 6 games, and the Thunder were competitive in that series. But you look at the Chet on-off numbers of that series, and that's why the Thunder lost to the Dallas Mavericks, who went on to go to the NBA championship. I don't know how sustainable your fastball being small ball or even your secondary pitch being small ball can be for a team. I think it's a good junk pitch. It's not what you're going to build your whole repertoire on, I don't think.
I think so much of this depends on matchups. Truly, I do. And I think that you have to be able to do kind of everything in today's NBA. Like, that's part of the beauty of the Thunder right now is they can play big, right? And I know that not everybody that's an OKC fan or watched the Thunder all year long always loved what Isaiah Hartenstein and Chet Holmgren looked like playing together, right? I mean, I don't think from the very start that was just a great lineup, but it's something that you have to keep working on during the season because you want to be able to use it effectively in the playoffs. Like, for instance, the Cavs finished this regular season, Rylan, with the number 8 defense in the NBA, and on a team that has the defensive player of the year in Evan Mobley, that has another really good rim defender in Jarrett Allen, has some good wing defenders in DeAndre Hunter and Dean Wade. Like, 8th is underachieving, but they tried so many different schemes and strategies so that when they got to the postseason, they would feel more comfortable deploying these things and finding ways to be effective on that end of the floor. So I think that this kind of all speaks to the depth. You still need the star power, but you have to play stylistically in different ways. Your identity, I think more so, and we learned this in the first round, I think your identity has to be, we can win games in more than just one way. And then the one other thing that I learned in the first round that I wanted to get to, I think Minnesota is for real. Like, if I had to pick a team, and I am still picking the Thunder to win the Western Conference and be in the finals, but if I had to pick a team in the West that can beat the Thunder, I think it's Minnesota. I underrated them coming into this postseason. I thought they were just okay, and I didn't think that a team that needed to win on the last day of the regular season to avoid the play-in was a team that I was comfortable saying, yeah, they could go to the finals. Well, now I have hotels booked in Minnesota for June.
Danny, I could not agree more with you. And the reason why I couldn't agree more with you is exactly what we talked about in this segment. How Minnesota can win in multiple ways, even against the top tier Thunder. We'll talk about that coming up. We're back on the Locked On NBA Game Night podcast with Danny Cunningham at Locked On Cavs. I'm Rylan Stiles, host of Locked On Thunder. Danny, you said before the break that you think Minnesota's basically the second best team in the West. They can beat the Thunder and go to the NBA Finals. I totally agree with you, because when you're looking at the versatility of these two rosters, the Thunder can go double bigs, they can go single bigs, they can go small and be really good at all three. So can Minnesota. If Rudy and Randall are playing at their apex, they're really good with 2 bigs on the floor. If only one of them is on, if you want to have Rudy as like this rim protector and surround him with scorers and shooters and Ant, that can be a really good lineup too. And then we know what Naz Reid can do as a lone big to really match the Thunder's ability to play small. That's the only team that can throw out all these different looks at Oklahoma City, because Oklahoma City is one of their biggest advantages is the fact that they can win in multiple ways. They can play any style you want to, and they can make you try to play any style that they want to make you try to play in these series. And Minnesota is the only team that can match them pound for pound in that category. Now, the Thunder's, of course, blade is sharper and talent is a bit better. That's why they're the favorite out West. But it is not impossible for Minnesota to not only match the Thunder, but then what if they just aren't getting the series that they want to from Randall and from Rudy? Those are 2 guys that we've had question marks in the playoffs, although they did play well against the Lakers. And what if they force the Thunder to go small? And Naz Reid, really good option for them. I cannot kind of overstate how much I love the ability for Chris Finch to put Naz Reid in the middle against this Thunder team. So, like, the ways that they can keep the Thunder adjusting is completely different than especially what Memphis could do, but even Denver. Like, how does Denver make adjustments in this series and force adjustments? You know exactly who they have to play, and you know exactly who they cannot play. They have 6 guys. Like DeAndre Jordan's going to have to play some because of how the roster is constructed. You hate the DeAndre Jordan minutes in the postseason, and the Thunder should dominate those minutes. So, like, how can Denver even try to adjust? Whereas Minnesota, they can not only out-adjust you, but they can force you to adjust.
And the other thing too that we haven't even talked about with them yet is they've got wing defenders. Like, they've got guys in a potential OKC series that I'm not saying they're going to shut Shea down, but Jaden McDaniels, on paper, pretty good matchup against SGA. I think Nickeil Alexander-Walker could do some good things against SGA. Anthony Edwards would spend time defending him. And with Ant too, he's going to go into that series believing, now he'll be wrong, but he'll go into that series believing that he's the best player on the floor. And in a 7-game series, which is a small sample size in this league, that can be a really dangerous thing because he's not the best player on that floor. It'll be SGA, but he's good enough that where he can believe it. And for 7 games, it might be true. When you combine all of those things, again, I'm not picking the Wolves to win that series. If it gets to that point, these 2 teams still have to win 4 more playoff games before this would even happen. But I can see a world where the Wolves would win that series because of all of those things.
Yeah, I mean, on Shea, the cousin rivalry, but also just a guy who, regardless of family tree, has had the most success against Shea this side of Herb Jones, who's been amazing against SGA for kind of as much as you can be against Shea. Again, we're not talking about taking Shea away because he's of that caliber that you can't do that. But you can certainly make life really hard on him and force the issue and force the ball into more inexperienced players start to step up. And then they either will or won't step up around SGA. And that's kind of the big question still with Oklahoma City. But Danny, we still have another game in the first round. Game 7.
Yeah,
Game 7
about that.
Let's just start it that way. We forgot about it. We've buried it. Game 7. Rockets somehow have forced this series to the brink. Does this matter to you? Does this really get you going? I mean, it sounds like we're both in love with Minnesota here.
I mean, I think the storylines are great. And I think either way, the storylines for the second round would be awesome before that, because one, you'd have Jimmy Butler returning to face a franchise that he burned to the ground in the postseason. Like, I think that's a really good thing. I think the Houston Rockets taking, a pretty, I think winning a series for them. I know they were the number 2 seed. I know they were a slight underdog entering this series, but winning a postseason series for them would be a pretty big step forward coming off of a rebuild, and certainly something that qualifies for a gigantic success of a season. And listen, overcoming a 3-1 lead would be an awesome thing. This isn't a legacy game for Steph Curry. Like, I think he's so far beyond that, but does he want to be the guy that has blown not 1, but 2 3-1 leads in a playoff series in his career? I believe it's only happened 13 times. Handful of those have been with Doc Rivers coach teams. Does Steph want to have 2 of those on his resume? Like, that is the thing that I look at about tonight's game.
I mean, it is the thing, because hand up, I was completely wrong. I didn't think that the Rockets stood a chance to win the series. I picked the Warriors in 6. I picked the Warriors in 6. I did not think that the Rockets had the offensive fortitude to even head into a game 7. Because again, I picked it to end in 6. And the Rockets are right there. And nothing, I mean, their offense has been dreadful for the most of this series. It has not been inspiring. But it's also like not been what's cost them overly in these games, the ones that they have lost. It's not necessarily been just their offense that's cost them. So now it's a 1-game sample size. And if the Rockets do kind of upset Golden State, because even though the seeding is flipped, you go check out who everybody was picking. Everyone was picking the Warriors to win the series because of that lack of offense. Like, man, this would be a massive win for Houston.
Not me, Rylan. Not me.
You picked the Rockets?
I picked Houston to win this series. I was a believer in the Houston defense. I was a believer in their double big lineup of Steven Adams and Alperen Şengün just being able to absolutely maul the Warriors on the offensive glass. And I was wrong about the games. I picked them in 6, but I am 48 minutes away from being right. And that, Rylan, is what matters.
That's all that matters, is that DC is correct. So
exactly. Finally, someone gets it.
Have yourself a DC in celebration of Danny almost being right and maybe perhaps being right by the end of today. And also, you should go back and listen in retrospect now ahead of Game 7. If you're a Rockets fan out there itching to get to Game 7, go back and listen to the Roundtable show, the Western Conference Squad show ahead of the first round of the playoffs, where Jackson Gatlin, host of Locked On Rockets, was fighting for his life to scream at us that the Rockets could win this series. And now, Danny, Jackson, they were right. Let's end it with this topic. Haka Adams. Is it stupid?
Yeah, because it's not working. Like, he is making enough of his free throws to say that the Rockets are actually being efficient offensively when he's shooting free throws. He's shooting around 50%. When the Warriors are deploying that strategy, 1 point per possession for the Rockets offensively, maybe not great for everybody, but for the Rockets in this series, that is good enough. Like, it's not a strategy. I think if Steve Kerr goes to this in Game 7 with Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler, that screams we are panicking. Like, that, it's a panic move. I think it sends the wrong message, and I don't think it's effective. What do you think about it?
Preach. This is why I love potting with you, Danny, because we just agree. It's like an echo chamber in here. It is.
That's what podcasts are supposed to be, right?
That's right. It is a complete desperate move for a team. Like, all we've talked about all year with the Rockets is like patronizing them. How cute little story, great defense, terrible offense. Oh, this is cute. And then you're gifting them a point per possession. And you're just saying, hey, here it is. They should not be able to generate a point per possession in this series because their offense is that dreadful, because they don't have go-to scores and go-to bucket getters in the postseason. And the Warriors are so freaked out by the Rockets, and the Rockets have gotten so far in their head with their amazing defense and with the ability for Fred VanVleet to go off and the ability for Şengün to step up, that they are just panicking and fouling Steven Adams, who is not a guarantee 0 for 2, and again, oftentimes goes 1 for 2 at least at the free throw line. On top of that, hey, guess what the Rockets are really good at? Rebounding. So it's like, when he does go 0 for 2, the Rockets get the rebound. What are you doing? You're just gift wrapping Houston the opportunity to beat you. I think that this is what Houston should love and embrace, because at the end of the day, you're going to have to play your guys if you're Steve Kerr in a Game 7. So who's going to be charged with those fouls if you're going to hack in Adams? And if you get cute and start pulling guys on off the floor, then Houston can really play a situation where they get you right where they want you, because you're either going to have to burn a timeout to get the guys back in there for offense, or run an offensive possession or two without your guys who you don't want to pick up fouls. It's just so beyond silly. If you played this game straight up, I think you'd have a much better time if you're Golden State. And I think that the Rockets should absolutely welcome this, because again, Adams is not being dreadful, but even if he does go 0 for 2, it's not a surefire thing that Golden State gets that rebound, because these are the two things this Rockets team is built on: defense and rebounding.
And what did he go in Game 6? I think 9 of 16 from the free throw line. Like, that is, and I understand not all 16 of those were from this strategy. But that is a failure of a concept. He is shooting over 50% from the line. That is too good of a free throw shooter to be fouling intentionally. And changing the flow of the game too, because I'm not going to sit here and act like Houston's offense is so good that, yeah, maybe you're giving up a point per possession but it's worth it because you're getting out of the Rockets out of their offensive flow. Like, I don't think an offensive flow exists for Houston. So this doesn't disrupt that. Like, it does not make sense to me that they're going to this.
I'm so glad you brought that up, Danny. It hurts
the greatest shooter of all time. Go play basketball. Tell Steph to make more shots. Tell Jimmy Butler to be playoff Jimmy, the guy that everyone talks about in Game 7. Stop fouling Steven Adams. Have some courage.
Dude, you're preaching to the preacher. The offensive flow point is the perfect point, because the Rockets are more susceptible to turning it over than they are of generating a great shot. Let them turn it over. You're gifting them these beautiful opportunities, and the Rockets should say thank you. It reminds me of the scene in Moneyball whenever Brad Pitt is teaching the Oakland A's about why bunting is so stupid, because if a team's going to bunt on you, just throw it to first and say thank you for letting you have one of the 27 outs you need to win. This Rockets team should send Steve Kerr a gift basket if they pull off this comeback, because it's the dumbest thing ever. And not even from like a curmudgeon-y, like, oh, well, you know, it slows down the game and this is not the spirit of the game. What? No, none of that. I'm fine with hack or whatever, but the hack or whatever has to work. And if
it's a losing strategy for them.
It is a complete losing strategy. And you're telling me that you wouldn't bank on Jalen Green and these guys that have a few turnovers that spark transition Steph Curry threes? Come on. Like, what are we doing here? So I am going to be watching for that Game 7 very closely. And you can also be getting a recap of that Game 7 right here on Locked On NBA Game Night, as well as Game 1 of Danny Cunningham's second-round series against the Indiana Pacers, where you can go find that recap in depth about the Cavs at Locked On Cavs, also Locked On Pacers for the second end of that series. And until tomorrow, be good and be good to one another.